Hey guys, welcome to our next installment of the IATBP Fireside Chat series. Right now I'm inviting our two today, Scott, Percy. Now, for those of you who don't know, Scott is a former competitor of the IATBP. He competed with us back in 2018. And he took second place in our first ever powerlifting meet before we even officially included powerlifting in our competition. So, and now he's moved on to competing in other events and coaching. So he's going to talk about his experience competing with us back in 2018, and he's going to also tell us a little bit about his journey from going from an athlete to a full-time coach as well. All right, let's see. I invited both of them. Let's see if we can get them here. Hey, Fluffy, Sufeng, I see you both in the audience. I'm reading your screen names. I invited both of you, so if you guys could either accept the invite or if you could send a request to join the call, I'll add you both. All right,
can you actually see me?
Scott sent me a request, so Sufeng, you might have to send me a request as well, because it seems like those invites don't really work. So sending a request is probably going to be the fastest way for you to get on with us. All right, I'm accepting there we go. Hello.
What is going on?
Hey, Scott, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh, I see. What's the problem? All right, now I can hear you.
What's going on with my headphones?
Yes, yeah, for me it's usually I forget to disconnect my Bluetooth from my wire, and my wire headphones are on at the same time, and so sometimes I won't hear, but I just I got everything sorted out on my end.
I wonder why my Bluetooth headphones are not working.
Oh shit, that sucks.
Let's try this. See if they do it that way. Maybe.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, hi Sifa.
Okay, great. It's so strange, Instagram. Like when you were talking earlier on that, I saw myself on the live already.
Start.
Yeah, Instagram is really weird, like with the live calls, because what happens is you guys will send me a request, and I'll have to accept it 3 or 4 times before you show up on my screen.
Oh, wow.
But sometimes you guys already are, like on your screen, you're already on the live, but on my screen, you're not yet, and I'm having to accept like multiple times. So I don't know.
Yeah, I was like, why are you calling me out? Because I saw myself on the screen already.
I call it as I see it. I'm sorry. Hi Scott. Did you I think you got everything sorted with your Bluetooth headphones, right?
Yeah. I just had to disconnect them and then reconnect, and now we're all good.
Awesome. Cool. All right. This is what we call the technical difficulties segment of the Fireside Chat. It happens at the beginning of every chat that we have, pretty much.
Yes, and I think that's kind of normal, right?
Yeah, if it was like a pre-recorded show, we'd have time to like set everything up properly, but since it's live, like it's almost always there's some chaos. But I'm just happy everybody's here within the first 5 minutes, and everything's working smoothly now. So for those of you all who were there listening to me talk at the beginning while I was getting these two on the call, I was explaining who we're going to be talking to today. So we have me and my co-host Sufeng. For those of you who don't know, I'm Nat. I'm the Assistant Executive Director of the IATBP. And then my co-host Sufeng is here with me, who is also a fellow board member of the IATBP, and you know, many other accolades, ambassador for the Gay Games, IFBB pro athlete, awesome posing coach. I don't want to read your whole resume because you do so much. And today we're going to be sitting down with Scott. So for those of you who don't already know or haven't been paying attention to our posts about the Fireside Chats, where we put a little bio about Scott, he's currently the world's strongest trans man, and you put some of your totals in the bio, which I thought was nice so that people could know exactly what that means quantitatively. You put your total was 1336, but that you're currently training for the gay games.
Yep.
And your goal is to get your total to 1400 for the gay games and eventually, hopefully, a 2,000-pound total. Is that kilos or pounds? That's kilos?
2,000 pounds total in pounds.
Okay. Okay, awesome.
So kilos, I think it would be like 901 or 9. It's somewhere in the 900 range.
Awesome. Okay, cool. And then also, this is a huge deal for us because we're having some old competitors come back and sit down with us, but Scott actually did compete with us back in 2018. And that was the IATBP's first ever powerlifting meet before we even officially had the P in IATBP. And he took second place in that meet. And since the following year, in about 2019, he started coaching. And has been coaching ever since, training predominantly other trans powerlifters. And also, I have to repost the men's health post, but you were also featured amongst many other former IATBP athletes and judges in a men's health article talking about other trans men athletes who are kind of changing the game for trans men and trans masculine athletes in sports. And it is Scott's also going to be featured in the Gay Games documentary. So a lot of cool stuff that has kind of been going on in your journey leading up to today and also looking toward the future. And we just want to thank you for taking the time to sit down and kind of delve deeper into all of that with us today.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. So before we kind of get into the questions and Q&A portion, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, because we're a little over a month out now, like a month and a half out from our November 18th competition. So for those of you who don't know, the International Association of Trans Bodybuilders and Powerlifters puts on a powerlifting meet and a bodybuilding competition every year in Atlanta, Georgia. And this year we're having both competitions on November 18th, also in Atlanta. And if you're interested in competing with us, registration is still open. So you can actually go after this call, because we hope that you stay on the call until the end, but you can go on our Instagram account and there's a post right at the top of the feed that shows you step-by-step how to go on our website, how to sign up to become a member, because you have to be a member in order to compete, and then how to sign up for your event and divisions and everything, and come join us down on November 18th. But if you don't want to compete with us, but you do get something out of this conversation with Scott, which we hope, it's going to be an awesome conversation for everybody. We hope that you consider supporting us, even if you're not planning on competing with us. And if you go look at that same post, it'll show you how to become a member for just $49 a year. And that membership is crucial to us being able to continue on next year, because without, the monetary support of our members and our athletes and other, sponsors and supporters, we won't be able to put on an event next year, unfortunately. So we really do need y'all's help and support in doing that. So we hope that everyone gets something out of this conversation and considers becoming a member afterward. Okay, I think that's everything for my little intro spiel.
Well, we'll give you 10 minutes, so.
Yeah, well, the first 5 minutes is getting everybody online, which is always a disaster.
Always a struggle.
Yeah, exactly. So, but okay, cool. So now I'd love to start getting into Scott, into your story a little bit, and kind of giving our audience members an idea of how you got started with lifting and got to where you are now. So if you could take us back to the beginning, we always ask anyone who comes on one of our chats kind of what got them interested in lifting weights in the first place. Maybe it was a transition from another sport or something. And what kind of got you into powerlifting specifically, because sometimes we get into like, CrossFit or something else, just lifting weights casually, and then like something is like, oh no, this is what I want to do. I want to do powerlifting.
So I started actually, I played rugby in high school. And then I tore my ACL and MCL, and then didn't lift for 5-6 years after that. Moved to Chicago, where I started pursuing my personal training certificate. So I started lifting there when I was homeless in Chicago, so I started lifting all just to take showers, but it also helped my transition helped me to basically become self-aware, if you would, and become a better version of myself. One day, one of my friends, his name is Devin, had reached out to me. We were talking about lifting, and he was like, well, do you want to lift together? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. So we were lifting, and then I told him, I was like, well, I don't care about aesthetics. I just want to be strong. He was like, well, have you heard of powerlifting? So that's kind of what started my journey anyway into powerlifting. So thank you, Devin. If you ever come across this, I just want to tell you thank you so much. So yeah, since then, it's been a ride.
Yeah. God, it's always one person, right? That like I think flips the switch for. I feel you because I had a friend in Taekwondo too who I saw him walk in one day and he was just like jacked, and I was like, I want to look like that. And to this day I'm grateful to that one person because they're the one who got me into bodybuilding basically.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
It's just it. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I like to like interrupt conversations. I'm just joking. So yeah, I'm really curious about like because like even like weightlifting, there's so many different types.
Mm-hmm.
So like Olympic liftings and stuff like that. So how is that special about powerlifting that attracts you to really continue, doing powerlifting moves? In contrary to other kinds of like weightlifting, sports.
that's a good question because a lot of people, there's like other ways to get strong too, like strongman and CrossFit and Olympic weightlifting. So what is it about powerlifting?
I think because honestly, no one's doing it. I've been so enamored. It's so involved with my side of things as far as seeing people come to me and seeing me and them being inspired by me that makes me allow. Brain doesn't want to cooperate. I apologize. I think words are hard, especially when you're just waking up from a nap. The fact that people continue to tell me that I am their inspiration, because nobody else is doing this. No cis-born male, cis-born female trans man is chasing these numbers. I mean, I want to, at the end of the day, have a 750 squat, 800 deadlift, and probably close to a 500 bench, which will get me my 2,000 total. This has been a really long path, and I love it. Most days I hate it, but I honestly love it at the end of the day. I love chasing the PRs. I love chasing the PR attempts, the 9 minutes on the platform that I will be there.
Yeah, I also think that like, you just not just talk about like strongman, for instance. I think strongman, the kind of sport just takes a little bit different of techniques and skills, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because each individual event isn't the same. So each meet's not the same. So you could have one event that's got ball carries, and then the next event you could have power cleans. So it's two different types of training that you would have to do. And I think honestly strongman is pretty cool. So
yeah.
Will you consider doing crossing other types of like weightlifting sports, in the upcoming future? Or have you tried some of these and realized that, oh, this is not really my sport? Because I asked this because while I was doing bodybuilding, I was also like thinking about, because, the longevity of bodybuilders as a career is not typically really, really long. So, you can still do master bodybuilding, but, it's just a different,
it's not
version.
the same.
Yeah, it's not the same thing, right? So did you try other like weightlifting related type of sports? And how do you feel that, does that actually reinforces the idea that, that's the passion, in powerlifting?
Honestly, I hadn't given any thought to crossing over to a different sport. I do want to cross back over to rugby after my next meet in April, just for cardio purposes, so I can drop a little bit of fat. But as far as doing another strongman sport, another like weightlifting sport, you're not the first person to mention something. One of my other friends have actually mentioned me going into strongman. So it might be in the future that I do it. It might not. Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, that's smart. You know, I mean, strongman is like I think it's a weightlifting version of CrossFit to me. Like, you know, the kind of variety. Because right. CrossFit is
That's
really
true.
much about, you know, the combination of like strength and endurance, right?
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
the, you know, the
Yeah,
kind
no,
of
absolutely.
the kind of uncertainty is pretty much the same because you don't exactly know really far ahead, you know, and what are the events that you're going to play, right? And there's
Yep.
so many different events that you can play, and I think that's the fun of it. But I think what's good about powerlifting, for instance, or even weightlifting or Olympic lifting itself, is that it's just very predictable. So that you can
Exactly.
actually, plan your routines. And I think bodybuilding, in certain extent, is also very predictable in the sense that, okay, I go to the gym, I know what I'm training, you know, how I want to be, you know, how I want to train in a certain way. I think powerlifting also have a very specific routine, right? And a lot of people just love that, you know, that idea that you have a very rigid routine that you can actually follow. Rigid in the sense that it's pretty much formed, but you know, you can have variations as well. But it's really much, you know, how you're going to train and you know what you're expecting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think probably the reason why I'm so attached to powerlifting is because I'm a very routine-based person. So if you ask me what am I doing on a Wednesday in 2 years, I'll tell you exactly what I'm doing, provided and giving you parameters of, okay, well, as long as I still have my job at FedEx, then this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I can tell you that because Wednesdays are my main bench days. So that's what I'm doing in 2 years. I know that I'm at least benching my main bench movement. So
the numbers might be different and the program might be different, but you know, on Wednesday in 2 years, you're going to be benching.
Yep. So I think that's, you know, having ADHD and being very routine based, I will probably stick to powerlifting, at least strength wise, for a while. I mean, I've been doing this since 2017, 2018, so 7 years, 7 years.
That's really cool. Yeah, you just mentioned earlier on when you tell, you know, a little bit about your background and your story. I'm actually curious about, you know, how can you tell us a little bit more? How does your transition actually, you know, coincide with the lifting itself? So does lifting actually gives you more confidence about your body, or, you know, is it the vice, the reverse that, you know, knowing who I am actually makes me more confident in actually doing, you know, powerlifting moves?
Yeah.
So it doesn't really coincide. Maybe it does. I hadn't really given any thought to it, but now that you had said something, I would say yes, because at the end of the day, helping to change my body and seeing it change pretty much on a monthly basis allows me to be more secure in myself and who I am. 10 times out of 10, you're not going to walk up to me and be like, hey, do you have a vagina? You know?
Yeah.
Whereas I can literally walk around without a shirt and nobody's going to be the wiser. So I would say yes. In a way, it allows me to be more not self-conscious, but self-confident, and give me the ability to be more authentic and continue to represent me as the man that I am.
Yeah, I'm always curious about, because for some people, they don't really feel like there's any, you know, intersection between the two. But when we ask that question, there are some people that they're like, yeah, you know, lifting helped me figure out that I was trans, or like for me, lifting personally like almost became a part of my physical transition before I could access like hormones and stuff like that. So for like 5 years, it was an aspect. Became a part of my transition almost. So I'm always curious, you know, people's stories with that. So
yeah, no,
I think, you know, having sorry.
Yes, God.
So I started socially transition actually when I was 10 years old. So I'm 32 now. Right. So I'm
Damn.
32 now, and this lifting came along 24, 23.
Yeah.
So,
Mm.
10 years lifting, but consecutively in powerlifting since 2018.
Gotcha. Okay. So it kind of like it eventually became an aspect of your life that gave you this self-confidence, but you knew you were trans, you were already kind of like the transitioning for a while at that point,
Yeah,
when it came
yeah,
around. Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty
Interesting.
cool. Yeah, that's very interesting, right? Because I don't know, like a lot of bodybuilders, like trans bodybuilders, I
Yeah.
think a lot of the experiences is that okay, through like training the body, you know, gives you kind of this idea of a you know a better vessel, right? So it makes you
hmm
feel more confidence,
Yeah.
right? And it does not always. I mean, for me, I think bodybuilding, the sport itself, enables me to uncover, you know, who I am, you know, in terms of my gender.
Yeah.
So I think it's a very interesting to hear stories where, you know, that doesn't always, you know, align. You know, this sport
Yeah.
could be an entirely separate thing, but it could also, you know, boost your confidence and your idea about self, right? In, you
yeah.
know, in a very indirect ways. So yeah, so talking about, you know, the competition experience with us, right, back in 2018, and taking second place in that competition. Um, can you tell us a little bit more about, you know, how that experience was like? How did you find us, you
Yeah.
know, in the first place? And what makes you decided that, okay, I have trained enough and now I should go on and try a competition?
Yeah.
Um, I actually don't remember how I came about finding the IATB. No, honestly,
No, you're
I don't
good.
remember. I do know that it was my first powerlifting competition. Just walking into it, it was pretty surreal. Because I had trained for a couple of months prior to it. Um, I didn't know what to expect,
Mm,
Hmm.
in all honesty. I compared to how many competitions I've done now, it definitely helped. It helped me to okay, well, I somewhat know what to expect if I walk into my next competition.
Hmm.
So this is what we're doing. But yeah, it was competing there was actually was one of my first real experiences as a powerlifter that I will forever hold in my head.
Hmm.
So
So that kind of meet was it kind of you feel like helped you kind of be the stepping stone to get from there to more like mainstream competitions and other meets and stuff like that after that.
yep, yeah,
Okay. That's interesting because we hear that a lot from bodybuilders who will come and step on stage with us. But a lot of times for powerlifters, it's either they've competed in other meets before or they only compete with us because they don't have any other competitions where they feel comfortable competing. So
right.
it's cool to know that we kind of helped you sort of launch you into other, bigger meets and stuff like that, and continue your powerlifting career. That's I mean, it's an honor for me. I wasn't even around at that time in the nonprofit, but it means a lot to know that we were able to do that for you.
Yeah,
Um,
and I've still actually got my original IATB card floating around here somewhere.
oh, that's
It's in one of my
awesome.
old yeah, it's in one of my old wallets. It says #1 on it, and I'm just like, all right, cool.
I love that because you always say like, oh, I'm actually the first IATBP member, and I'm always like, I wasn't around back then. I didn't join until like late 2019, so I'm like, what does he mean by that? But now I know what you mean. Like, you have a membership card and it says one on it.
It does. It really does. Bucky filled it out, and I was like, all right, cool.
I love that. I want to like frame it for you just as like I'm it just makes me so happy to know that like, you were the first member and you still have the card and you still like, have these good memories around competing with us. But But yeah,
Yeah,
so that. Oh,
Nat
sorry.
has
Go ahead,
been,
Sifam.
yeah, Nat, in our pre conversation, me with
Hmm.
Nat, we're discussing what we're going to ask you today. Like Nat was like, okay, I have to ask that why is it number one? Now,
What does he
now,
mean?
now,
No,
get
like
your mystery
literally.
stuff.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
important because Siofeng and I weren't around back in the early days of the IATBP, so we love having these conversations with you guys who are competing with us like way back before we joined, so we get to really understand better the history of the organization that we work for. So it's really cool.
yeah, Scott. So I have a related question, right? So about mostly about the powerlifting, experiences and competition experiences that you have. So do you find any particular differences, like, in terms of competing with us and competing in some of these other like more mainstream like powerlifting competition? Yeah, and is there anything that you find it more, find it unique in IATBP, in maybe, I don't know, in our like ways of like scaling the athletes, or the ways that, the community that you feel? Yeah, so do you find any differences, or is it pretty much similar to how you experience in mainstream competition?
Um, well, I only have one to compare with, and it's back in 2018.
Hmm.
So I don't know if y'all have changed how your production level is set up.
Mm,
So I'm only going to base it off of my own experience
For sure, yeah.
from 2018. But comparatively, the competitions that I have done, production level is a lot more. They view it as an actual event
mm,
that needs to be televised. So powerlifting is going on Twitch, on YouTube, on a bunch of streaming services. So as far as that goes, it's a lot more stressful to do a local meet, because there are a lot of local level meets that their production level is like a Vegas, for instance.
Hmm.
So that throws a okay, let's stress a little bit more
Yeah.
into the meet. So that meet in comparison wasn't as stressful as I would look at it now. Back then, of course, I was stressed out the gills because I didn't know what I was doing. So, but now that I've got more experience, looking back, it's like, okay, well, it wasn't as stressful as most of these meets are now.
Hmm.
mm.
Gotcha.
Yes, I think that's very interesting, right? Because I would anticipate, like, I didn't actually know that a lot of okay, yeah. So I feel like,
Yeah.
the difference in stress is very crucial, right? And I
Yeah.
feel like, when you have a more experience, right, in more competitions, you get more, you just get more peaceful, right? Before making that exact lift. So I think that also makes a huge difference, compared to, being first time. I think IATBP is your first time, right? Is it your first
Yes,
time? Yeah,
that was
first time
my
competing in it.
very first meet.
Yeah, so I think that could count a difference as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is so cool. So do you have are you still keep in contact with some of these other powerlifters that were in your meet with during that IATBP in 2018? Or do you have I don't know, do you still keep in contact with one another? How many other
Um,
like trans powerlifters are there out there right now? Because I know you're also coaching some.
I
Sifo just
would.
asked you like three questions.
Which question do we want to answer first?
Whatever you want.
I don't really keep in contact with everybody that I had met
Mm,
back at the meet. I think we went our separate ways. I
mm,
know one of them was dealing with a lot of personal issues,
Mhm.
so they kind of fell off of the interwebs. I think I still have Jack, I want to say his name is,
I
on
think
my
so, yeah.
Facebook. I'm not too sure if why is this going off? I'm not too sure if I do still have him on Facebook, but I hope I do, so I can reach out. We might be able to lift again together if I decide to go down next year.
Mm.
Um, right. What was the next questions?
Do you know like how many other trans powerlifters are out there, planning to compete in, competitions or lifting in general?
So I
What is your
do.
assessment of the entire competitive trans powerlifting community, basically?
No, not just based on your knowledge, right? So is there an
Yeah.
increase? Is there a trend of more? Because we do see, in terms of bodybuilding, we actually
Okay.
see more and more, right?
Yeah.
So how about powerlifting?
So follow-up question. Are we talking about trans, the entire trans umbrella to incorporate our non-binary brethren, or are we just talking about trans men and trans women?
I would say all trans
Yeah.
trans people, yeah, because I mean, Stefan and I are both non-binary, so I think we're curious about
Gotcha.
everybody. Yeah.
So I want to say I coach the majority that I know of. There are a couple of outliers that that don't train with me that I want to train with me. Yes, I'm looking at you. Yeah, I'm looking at you. You hit my DMs. Um, so there are a couple that I would love to train. Um, I'd probably say there's a good amount of trans folks that are now coming out of the woodwork
Mhm.
that are at least making their presence known to me,
Mhm.
as far as the strength community world. So I don't know. I think it might just be 50 people,
Mm.
The people. Okay,
which
interesting.
honestly is it's not a lot, but it's a lot. It's a lot more than what it used to be.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I think we're curious because I don't know if you've noticed, but Stefan and I are more heavily involved in bodybuilding. Like we're
Mm.
bodybuilders, so we don't really keep as in touch with the powerlifting side of things. And for us, like we're seeing more and more and more, just like every year, there's like twice as many, trans bodybuilders competing or getting into the sport casually and just like becoming obsessed with it. And since I don't pay attention to the powerlifting side of things, I don't know if maybe it's just because I'm not paying attention or if there's just not as much of an interest. And so it makes me curious because I feel like with powerlifting, like as long as you have like a bar, you can train powerlifting, right? A bar and some plates. So I don't see why
Yeah.
there wouldn't be. And it's less physique focused, which like I feel like can be harder for trans people sometimes to really have to like assess their body the way a bodybuilder does. And it's more mentally like awesome, I think, to be able to just feel yourself getting strong. So I'm like, am I missing something that there's not as many trans powerlifters like getting into it or
No, you're not. I think it goes back to the social construct.
mm,
Mm.
More people care about looks than they do strength. Um,
gotcha.
Mm.
Plus, also, you want to be able to pass 100% of the time.
Right.
So people more so care about how they look versus how much they can lift. I'm the opposite. I don't care what I look like. I just want to get strong.
Yeah.
That's it. Because society tells us that we have to look a certain way in order to be male. We have to look a certain way in order to be female. We have to look a certain way to be non-binary.
Hmm.
Mm.
And that goes back to the social construct of bodybuilding,
Right.
because bodybuilding is strictly based on aesthetics.
Idealized physique. Yeah. That makes
Yep.
sense. I didn't think of it like that.
And I
Um,
also think that, yeah, and also think that like being strong, being able to lift those weights actually make, especially if you are trans mass on the spectrum, it actually makes you look more masculine too. That's what I
yeah.
tend to believe. So I think, to a certain extent, maybe for some trans folks, actually lifting stronger could actually increase your masculinity or muscularity in general. So yeah, I think that's a very interesting. There's always a very interesting like crossing of like the differences of what kind of sports that trans people would love to and trans and non-binary folks would like to actually take on.
Yeah.
And I mean, switching a little bit something else but related. is that I'm also very curious about, you being, you decided to be a coach, right? Because I know you first competed with us in 2018, and then you start helping, other athletes to, in whether they live strong or, to really compete, right? So how was that transitioning from being an athlete to a coach look like to you? Was it a really hard transition? Was it something that, kind of something that you always kind of know of in some ways?
So I think in the back of my head, it was always kind of there that I was going to end up coaching. I wanted to give back to the community. Look, when I started my research in powerlifting and strength training in general, there was a lot of misinformation. Like the more you learn about how the body moves, how it operates, how everything correlates to each other, you learn that there's a lot of misinformation out in the world, and a lot of resources aren't pointed in our direction. Like there aren't as much information out in the world to help better us in terms of medical, let alone fitness.
So when you say misinformation, do you have like an example? Like for example, what kind of misinformation that you see most often being portrayed?
Testosterone boosters help trans men. They don't.
Yeah.
I've fallen prey to that one. I can't even say anything because I've literally taken them under the same misinformation. So I feel you.
Right. So if anybody's out there looking to take testosterone boosters, look at taking DHEA instead. It is essentially like testosterone, but there are a couple of different markers that are missing. That is what I took before I started test. It actually dropped my voice a couple of octaves.
Yeah. Okay. So that's really interesting because I also took testosterone booster for a year or two, very early on. Like,
look, there's nothing wrong with it.
Right?
There's nothing wrong with it
because there's a word testosterone, so you're feel obsessed, right? Yes, but now for some years I knew that it's just a marketing stuff, But yes, I think those are some of these misinformation in relation to medical transition, to transition itself, basically. Is there any misinformation that you have most often heard of within the powerlifting, field, and in relation to trans and
in regards to like training specifically, probably, right? Yeah, for trans people.
Reps build strength, but it doesn't. If you're looking to get stronger, you need to stay within 3 to 6 reps, but that goes literally for anybody. There's a lot of things that gets misconstrued, like the higher reps are for endurance, and that will translate to strength. The lower reps are strictly for men, and you need to do that, whereas it needs to be a combination of both. So I have a program.
So wait, you mean 8 to 12 isn't the perfect bodybuilding rep range? I've been training 8 to 12 for 8 years. What are you talking about?
Well, that answer is it depends. So as a newbie, if newbies being under 5 years, you could get away with doing 8 to 12 reps.
Right.
But the conundrum is, how many sets are you doing?
Yeah.
So are you only doing 3 sets? Are you only doing 4 sets? Are you doing 5? Are you doing 6? That is the ultimate question at the end of the day.
Yeah. I like the myth that you put out there of like, oh, if you're like a cis woman, you need to be within this rep range that's higher. And if you're a cis guy, you need to be in this like lower rep range, because like if you go into online communities and stuff, the issue with a lot of trans masked athletes in particular is they'll always be like, do I do this or this for my training because I'm a trans guy and so I want to look like a guy, but I'm pre-T or I just started T, and so how do I, do my training based on these weird gender recommendations? And it's all like when you're transitioning from like whatever your assigned gender at birth is to whatever you identify as, like it can be a little bit messy trying to wade through all of the gendered myths about training to try and figure out what you're supposed to do based on like where you're at and what your goals are.
Yep.
So that was very interesting that you brought that up.
Yeah, if it's the FTM Fitness Reddit page is full of things like that.
I don't even go on there.
Yeah, and I would also say that, in bodybuilding, in contrary, is that, I think one of the myths is that, the stronger that you lift, the more it translates to your physique, right? So I think it's a kind of a different, type of myth, right? That, you have to train, really, really heavy and lift really heavy. And I would say, same to you, it really depends, right?
Yeah.
Whether you're training for strength in particular, or are you training for shape, for muscle shape and definition, right? So it would entail two different types of trainings. But a lot of people, a lot of times I think social media has a lot of influence that you see other people lifting very, very heavy, but don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And then you would say, oh, that's how they do it. And that's how they show you, because they only show you the heaviest lift and then they show you a good physique. And then you would just associate that, lifting really heavy without proper form and techniques would automatically translate to better physique. And I think that is, I think in particular for bodybuilders and bodybuilding, there is this persistent myth there. And, the lighter you train, you look like, you're not training and you don't know how to train. So I think, that is, something very different from, I think, from powerlifting. So, so I can see that, one of, your goals, right, to become an aspiration, to become a coach is to really, to put out, really correct information, right, about training, about transition, about, testosterone in general, maybe, right? And I think those are really important. So, if you have to compare the experience of being, I mean, you're both now, right? Being an athlete, and also being a coach, if you have to compare those two, slightly different experiences, which would you prefer? Do you prefer to be a coach more, or do you prefer to be an athlete more?
Ooh, that's a pretty loaded question. I don't know. If I had to, at the end of the day, pick, if I suffered a career-ending injury, then obviously I would go with coaching. But if I could take my brain out of it and just have somebody tell me what to do, obviously I would go with being just an athlete. But unfortunately, my brain does not work that way. It has to know the why. Why am I doing this set? Why am I doing this specific exercise? Why am I doing it this way instead of this way? So that's where I blend the athlete and the coach in.
Right.
So it's hard to discern. It's a very hard question to answer, at least for me anyway.
Do you think that like being a coach and having to help other people and like write their programming and train them, do you think that that's made you a better athlete in regards to your own personal training? Or like, do you think it's influenced your training at all?
I would say yes, because just the amount of research that I've had to do and the amount of reading that I've had to do to help fine-tune my programming skills plays a lot into how I program myself. Skylar knows this already, but he knows he's my guinea pig as far as new programming goes. So sometimes I'll evolve new tactics onto his programming, and we pretty much go from there. And if it works on him, then I start divvying it to my other clients. So yeah, it definitely helps with my self-programming.
Yes, and I think coaching itself is always about try and error and experimenting, right? And also I think, even so, one way that works with one athlete does not always apply to other athletes. And so there is always adjustment, and failures, I think. And those failures actually inform, how you can be better and how you can make someone else better. Right.
All a failure is another data point.
Exactly.
That's all it is. So if you're sure. If you're looking at it, let's take bench for example. If you break it down into individual movements, you know you need a strong upper back, strong delts, strong triceps. So if you fail off the chest, you know that you need to work your upper back. So you start programming a lot of back movement. So close grip, flat pull down. You start programming a lot of wide grip, pull down, and then a lot of rows, a lot of just a bunch of back movements to include pull-ups as well. So then once you get past that sticking point, you would have to be like, okay, well, this works, so now I'm failing right at lockout, which you know is triceps. So you start running a bunch of tricep work, and then it's a continuation of that. So you're only as strong as your weakest muscle at the end of the day.
I like the way that you said it. A failure is just another data point, and I think that's something that I think all athletes in any sport kind of struggle to see. They really attach a lot of emotion into that failure. I know, like for me with bodybuilding, like whenever like my weight wasn't trending a specific direction that I didn't want it to go, I would start to like take it personally and like get really like emotionally like upset about it. And then but that was back when I was doing shit on my own and I wasn't like helping other people. And now I have a much better relationship with it where like if my weight isn't doing what I want it to do, I'm like, okay, this is just data. Like there's no reason to get emotional about my weight. And so I'll go and like look at what my training logs and my nutrition logs have been, and what has my stress been like, and what has my sleep been like, and then you just correct from there. And that's really helped me a lot. And I think it helps a lot of athletes, especially in bodybuilding and powerlifting, where the failure is just like, it's so difficult to deal with.
But also in the same breath, it is a very emotional, bodybuilding and powerlifting are both very emotional sports.
For sure.
You got to think about it. I've been looking forward to competing at the Gay Games since 2018. And then finding out some very disheartening information, I've had to take a lot of emotion out of it and draw my training back a little bit. So it's definitely stressful. That's to say the least.
Yeah.
And since you mentioned about Gay Games, like tell us more about did you competed in the Gay Games before, or is the upcoming one the first time that you compete in the Gay Games? Why did you pick Gay Games? Out of so many different types of competition, even LGBT competitions.
Yeah.
So Chris Morgan I followed Chris Morgan for a little while. He was the director of the LGBT powerlifting union out in the UK, which was something I had found him shortly after competing at the IATB in 17, 18 years. I hate years. So I found them shortly after, and I saw that Paris had just happened, and I was like, oh, I could have competed there. Yeah. So it was like, okay, cool. Well, now I get to look forward to the next one. So I've kind of been training for the Gay Games since 2018. So that's my ultimate. All right, so we're gonna go here.
And are you going to the one in? I think Siufeng mentioned there's one in Mexico and one in Hong Kong.
Yep. So I'm going to the one in Mexico, in Guadalajara. Okay. So we're just under 6 weeks out.
Shit, it's coming up. Are you nervous?
Yes.
Yes.
So I'm ultimately only nervous about the spotters and loaders. At the end of the day, I know what I can lift, and I just need to make sure that someone's there to catch me if I do fail.
Yeah, but I think Gay Games should be professional enough in handling that. So, they have very strict rubrics, I guess. I mean, I don't know the
I'm sorry.
situation in Mexico.
Sufeng is an ambassador for the gay games in Hong Kong, so that's what they're like familiar with the Hong Kong.
I mean, I understand that, but
Yeah.
gay games Hong Kong don't have powerlifting though, so
Right, yeah.
we don't actually entirely know the situation of powerlifting. But I would say yes, really depends on who are they having, right?
Yeah.
For the site support, right? And if they don't have enough professional people, it could make you worry to a certain extent.
This is actually an issue that I've been trying to get corrected for a while. Because I had a conversation with somebody that told me that I wasn't inclusive enough because I asked for competent spotters and loaders. That is my biggest issue when it comes to the games. I was planning on squatting 600 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
You throw 600 pounds on your back. One, as someone who's born female, that is a lot of weight. But not just somebody born female, but somebody born male. That's still a lot of weight.
Mm-hmm.
It's 600 pounds on your back. If you're walking up to the weight on the bar, let's say you're going for a max. This is a number that you've never attempted before, but you are feeling extremely confident. Confident, not competent. You're feeling extremely confident in your lifts. Your first and your second attempt, they both flew. If you have 606 pounds loaded on the bar, and you've got some guy that looks like he was just plucked off the street, can barely squat 135, your confidence goes from here to here in an instant. And that is the immediate difference between making your third attempt and failing and possibly suffering a very serious injury.
Yeah, so your concern is the psychological, spotters that aren't confident in, helping you if you were to fail a lift.
Correct.
Like the psychological impact it has on your ability to actually make the lift.
Correct.
Is what you're saying.
Because at the end of the day, so squats are the biggest, in my opinion, squatting is the most mental lift. So you can lay down on a bench. You can walk up to a bar and you could just pull the bar for a deadlift. For a squat, you have to have so many things go right. If in order for you to make the lift. If it doesn't go right, it could go wrong very quickly. You can end up with double quad tears. You could end up with a broken ankle. You can end up with a torn abductor. You could pop a rib out. You could break a wrist. There's so many things that can go wrong in the squat that it is literally, in my opinion, the most mental lift of all three.
Yes, and I think that makes entirely sense.
Yeah,
so in your competition, like in your experience, or maybe in competing in mainstream competitions, I think it also depends on the scale. But in general, do you think mainstream competitions actually take care of that aspect much more responsibly in general?
Yes. I know, at least for my area, for the DMV area, Travis Rogers makes certain that he's got the best spotter and loader crew. I have not seen a single person get injured from his spotter and loader crew. If somebody fails a lift, they're on it. It's just an immediate reaction. He's got some of the best spotter and loader crew that I've ever seen. He actually suffered a double quad tear just over a year ago, and his spotters, it could have been worse had he not had a good spotter and loader crew. His spotters literally caught the bar as soon as it happened. So that prevented it from being worse.
Right.
Yeah, I think that makes very much sense. So
and that's the reason they're there, right? To protect you in case something goes wrong. That's the whole point of the spotters. So.
Right. Sue, I'm pretty sure you heard of the bodybuilder that was squatting with 495. His spotter was on top of him, but when he failed the lift, he died.
Yes.
So that having a competent spotter and loader crew is literally crucial to a good powerlifting meet. you can have the best production level, you can have the best refs, you can have the most money prize pool, you can have all of that. But if you don't have a good spotter and loader crew, you might as well not even put the meet on.
Mm. Yes, yes. I think that is really, you know, something that, you know, bodybuilders, you know, do not need to consider about. And I think that's very
Yeah.
important, you know, to be able to know, like, you know, what are the specifics of each sports, especially catering, to really protect, you know, athletes from injuries. So I think that is
Yeah.
very crucial. So yeah, but you know, one of our last aspects that we really want to, you know, learn more from you is, you know, your featuring at the Men's Health magazine. Can you tell
Yeah.
us more about, you know, how did you get into that? How was that experience look like?
So I didn't apply for anything. I was just going on about my nice little day, and I got a request from Men's Health, and that they had followed me. I was like, oh, okay, cool. You know, this huge Instagram page has
Yeah.
1.7 million followers, and you know, here I lowly am with 900. So what could they want? Go into the messages, and then there's this really long message, and I'm just reading it, and I'm just like, whew, wow.
Yeah.
So it was surreal. Honestly, I thought it was a scam at first.
I would have
I was
too.
like, this is a scam.
Yeah.
This is honestly a scam. I am a nobody. What are y'all doing here?
Yeah.
And then we were talking, and then they sent me an email, and you know, little me and my ADHD brain, I was like, okay, who is this media outlet? And then, you know, you find a PDF file that's got everybody that this company owns, and there it is, Men's Health. I was like, all right, this is real.
Yeah.
So and that phone call, it was a pretty cool phone call. I spoke to the author, the writer, for probably about an hour. It was a very nice phone call too.
Yeah. Did they tell you what the kind of like what the purpose of the article was and like why they wanted you? Like what did they kind of pitch to you to get you to want to actually be a part of it?
So they had said that they were doing features for trans. Can't remember if it's trans coaches or athletes, but it was going to be centered around Pride Month for trans folks.
Okay. And then so like what was significant about that for you that made you be like, okay, yeah, I want to be a part of this? Like why was it important for you once they kind of pitched that to you to say yes and know that you were going to be platformed on Men's Health as the world's strongest trans man? Like why was that significant for you and our community and everything like that?
To continue to spread awareness, to basically show trans men and trans women around the world that we can do this, even though society tells us we can't. You know, so if I can bench 315, so can you. You know, if I can pull 500 pounds, so can you.
Yeah.
You know, it's stuff like that. Like I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I'm paving the way for other trans folks, and it is continuously evident that I am just by people telling me that I am their inspiration, that, you know, I'm the reason that they started lifting, that, you know, they're doing their first powerlifting meet because of me, and it's really inspiring, and that is what keeps me going.
And I think that's really true because a lot of times, even in all these anti-trans athlete, you know, legislation or, you know, the bans from some of these like sports governing bodies, a lot of times they focus on trans women, right? So because there is this underlying assumption that trans men cannot be, you know, cannot beat out cis men, right, in the men's category. And so, you know, they're not a threat, so-called. Right, or they're not someone that could actually, kind of shake this whole structure of patriarchy, I would say, right? So I think, having a representation like yourself, right? Being able, as a trans man, as an out, proud, visible trans man, being able to lift that much heavy weights, I'm sure most of the cis men cannot lift as much weight as you are, right? So, it's really, imposing a really important message that, trans men could also be, in a positive sense, could also threaten, the men's category. And you should really pay more attention to trans masculine and trans men in general.
Yeah.
Not just talking about, how trans women would be, threatening, so-called the women's category. So, and undermining the strength and potential of trans male athletes. So I think, your visibility, especially, at men's health, which is a really, really huge, fitness platform, right? That could really give us a very, very strong and, important awareness.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yes. So I think, our conversation that was a really nice conversation with you. And before we end, I always would love, tips for our upcoming athletes. Do you have, especially those who are, thinking and considering and, have registered for our powerlifting meet for in November 18th this year with us? Do you have any tips or advice that would love to give some of these athletes? Or, is there any advice that you might have, you want to receive, if, going back to, your experience in the first competition?
Pause your bench. If you're not
Pause
doing
your bench.
if you're not doing it now, you better start.
Yeah. That's good. I hear that one a lot, actually. Like, because people practice their bench without pausing, and then they get to the meet, and they're like, "Oh wait, what?"
They're like, there was a command there. Oops. So that would be the biggest one. Pause your bench, and then.
Can you okay? So I'm not a powerlifter. Can you explain a little bit? What does that? Why is it important?
Pause the bench.
Yes. Why is it important?
So in squat bench and powerlifting, we have three. We have squat, bench, deadlift. Each lift has a command. So the head judge bench, you sit on the bench, you lay down, you grab the bar, you unrack it. Once the head judge sees that the bar is unracked and you have control of it, he'll give you the start command. Then you bring the bar down with control to your chest. You pause it. He sees that you have control of the bar. He'll give you the press command. You press the bar up. Then once he sees that you have stopped the movement and that you have control, he will give you the rack command. And that's when you rack it. So those three, it's start, press, and rack. Those are the three commands that you need to listen for. For squat, it's start and rack. There's no pausing at the bottom. There's no, all right, we're going to pause here and then squat it up. Nope, it's just start and rack. For deadlift, it's grab the bar, stand up. Once you see that once the ref will see that you stood up with the bar, he'll give you the down command, and that's it.
Yeah, it's very different than like what we're used to, where you're used to starting a rep, and then once you've done like the full eccentric or whatever, you just go straight into the concentric. But bench is the only one at the powerlifting meet where you're actually required to hold the bar at your chest and wait for the meet director or ref to tell you that you're allowed to push it back up. And if you don't wait and you just start pushing it back up, then it won't count as a valid lift, even if you do the whole thing. So
touch and go, as I like to call them.
Yeah, touch and go, yeah. So it's, if you don't know that going into a meet, you could totally screw up your chances of making a lift.
Yep, and you can bomb out too, so we don't like bombing out.
That's a really good tip. I mean, I didn't know that. Obviously, I didn't like compete in the powerlifting. I just thought of like coming down and going up. Right? So I think a lot of people probably think that, I trained that and then I know, right? So that's a really, really, really good tips. Do you have any more tips for athletes before we see if we have any questions from the crowd?
Focus on recovery. Recovery is going to be your biggest thing. Make sure you're getting enough, drink enough water, get enough sleep. You don't want to go into any training session with less than enough hours of sleep. Invest in a good bed.
Shit. Yeah, that's true. The recovery is everything. So.
Like today, I went to cryotherapy, and then I bought a new bed. So that was a really expensive purchase. My pocket still hurts.
It's important though. I understand the purchase. All right, cool. Well, I think the only thing that we really have is someone DM'd me a question yesterday. So if I'm gonna go ahead and ask you the question before we close out, which is that they saw in your bio that there's something about a gay games documentary, and so they asked me like, what is that? When is it coming out? Like, what are you gonna do? What are you being featured for? Like in that? Like, can you tell us any teasers about that, or is there like a non-disclosure agreement you signed?
I haven't signed any non-disclosure agreements yet. I don't know much information. I do know that they're still trying to get funding. That's really all I know. I've had a conversation with the directors. They're still very interested in making a documentary. All I know so far is that it's going to happen. So we'll see.
Okay, well then to that person, I would say go follow Scott if you don't already. And I'm assuming as like more information comes out that they give you, you'll probably be sharing about that like on your Instagram, right? So,
yeah.
So that's the answer to that question. Follow Scott and you'll find out the deets as they come out.
Yeah. And I would also say, good luck to your upcoming competition.
Thank you.
I know we are all rooting for you. And then break some like good PRs and even maybe world records.
No world records as of yet.
But yes, I think, it's really a great pleasure to have like a conversation with you and know more about your journey and, some of these nuance, in different sports. And I think those are really valuable for our audiences as well. And of course, if you find, our conversation today very helpful for you, of course, think of competing with us in November 18th. If you're unable to, yes.
I won't be able to actually this year because the meet is November 5th. So
yeah. I think Sifon was kind of talking to the audience because we already knew you had the gay games that you couldn't.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh yes. I was talking to the audience.
They made that transition kind of, yeah.
Sorry.
Whoops, my bad.
It's okay. It was very subtle transition, so you had, it's okay.
Sorry, I was like trying to, end the conversation.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, so like for everyone who is watching, so come join us on November 18th for our competition. Or, you can, support us by becoming a member of IATBP. So, all these details and information, you can just come and follow us at iatbp.official. And also, please also follow Scott so that you will know more about his, journey and also like his upcoming competition at the Gay Games. And we wish you all the good luck for the competition and for any future of your competition. So like we are very, very happy to have you here, and we look forward to see you become even more successful.
Yes, even stronger.
And even stronger. Yes. Anything I missed, Nat? Oh no. Yes. What are we going to have for our next Fireside Chats?
Yes, we don't have them scheduled yet, but what we're trying to do for this next month is discuss with some previous and upcoming judges and meet directors for bodybuilding and powerlifting that we've had, and they're going to talk a little bit about the expectations that they tend to have as a meet director for a powerlifting meet or as a head judge for a bodybuilding competition, so that those athletes that are coming to compete with us or who might want to compete with us in the future can have a better idea of kind of what it is that they need to be paying attention to with their training, with their posing and stuff like that. how to tweak it in order to get the most out of their lifts on the platform or their posing on stage. So we'll be updating on our Instagram. So follow our Instagram at IATBP.official if you haven't yet. We're going to be announcing who those conversations are going to be with and the dates and times. But yeah, thank you for reminding me of that, Steve. And again, thanks, Scott. Like, really, thank you so much for taking this time to sit down with us and tell us your story and, you know, give lots of coaching advice and what's going on for you in the future. I mean, it just really means so much to us that we get to have these conversations with former athletes and that competed with us. So thank you so much.
Yes, absolutely no problem.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us, and thank you also Funk for your time. So follow us on Instagram, follow Scott, and we hope to see you guys next month at our next Fireside Chat, which will be announced on our Instagram.
Thank you so much, and have a good day, everyone.
Have a good rest of your day. Yeah.